I now invite the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Eritrea, Ms. Sheila Keetharuth, to report to the committee. You have the floor.
Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. President, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to brief you for the third time in my capacity as the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Eritrea. Created in 2012, the Human Rights Council renewed my mandate for the third time in July 2015. I was asked to address and engage in an interactive dialogue with the General Assembly. At the outset, I wish to highlight that since my mandate was extended, I continue to be a commissioner on the Commission of Inquiry on Eritrea. In undertaking both mandates, I have sought to ensure that the integrity of each is maintained with no duplication of our respective work. Today, I would like to highlight key areas of concern I raised in my third report to the Human Rights Council in June 2015, namely the enjoyment of economic, social, and cultural rights, more specifically, the right to adequate housing, smuggling and trafficking, and the increasing number of unaccompanied minors who form part of the more than 5,000 people who flee the country on a monthly basis for an uncertain future. Let me first of all congratulate Eritrea for the coming into force of the Civil Code, the Penal Code, the Code of Civil Procedure, and the Code of Criminal Procedure. These laws remain in transitional mode since the de facto independence in 1991. Whilst long overdue, their enactment is a welcome development. I also welcome Eritrea's recent engagement with the Committee on the Rights of the Child and the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. I would encourage Eritrea to submit its initial report to the Committee Against Torture, which was due on the 25th of October 2015. Mr. President, Excellencies, I regret to date I have not been granted access to the country. My most recent letter dated 24th of August 2015 requesting a visit to Eritrea remains unanswered. I would like to thank the governments of Belgium, Finland, Netherlands, and the United Kingdom for accepting my request for visits this year. This enabled me to deliver on my mandate in light of the challenges regarding access to Eritrea. I was able to engage with academic institutions and meet with Eritreans who live in these countries, which includes refugees and asylum seekers. Distinguished delegates, I would like to briefly touch on the issue of human smuggling and trafficking and the refugee situation. When I embarked on this journey as Special Rapporteur, many Eritrean refugees and asylum seekers I interviewed described severe human rights violations they experience along escape routes. My stated position was, whilst the human rights violations that occurred to Eritreans outside Eritrea was not the focus of my reports, these abhorrent acts required urgent and in-depth examination in other contexts. In 2013, I came across the case of two boys, aged 12 and 14, reportedly abducted from inside Eritrea and taken to a human warehouse in the desert. I did not use this information, having no means to corroborate it. However, earlier this year, I interviewed a witness who was held captive in the same location as the two boys allegedly abducted from inside Eritrea, while traffickers waited for ransom money to be paid. This allegation presented both the elements of a human rights violation and possibly the continuation of a crime that originated from inside the country. It took 2 years to reach a point where I started asking questions regarding this particular set of facts. What mechanism has the government put in place to protect citizens from such acts in view of its duty to protect those on its territory? If there is such a mechanism in place, How well known is it? How is money transferred for people to be released? What are the impacts of such violations of human rights and crimes on the victims and on their families? What are the impacts, short-term and long-term, of such commoditization of Eritreans and on society as a whole? Yet traffickers and smugglers are symptoms, not the cause of clandestine departures. People are not at liberty to leave legally. Consequently, many are willing to risk their lives and face unimaginable dangers, including the prospect of torture at the hands of smugglers and traffickers, to escape a multitude of human rights violations. Freedom of movement, the right to leave legally, is denied to them, as exit visas are given restrictively. I continue to be concerned about the human rights situation in Eritrea, where persistent violations are compelling thousands, many of them very young, to cross international borders and to seek refuge outside their country. Discussions linked to the stream of refugees leaving Eritrea are currently reduced to push and pull factors and a series of statistics which are becoming more and more alarming. I'm humbled by the personal stories of Eritreans who have experienced violations and severe restrictions of civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights. I spoke to people who left Eritrea during the first half of 2015. The main reasons for fleeing remains the national service, which in effect amounts to forced labor. This includes disproportionate punishments for insignificant mistakes and the fear of being trapped in the national service ad infinitum. I'm aware of promises that the national service will be limited to 18 months as initially prescribed by law. However, I'm yet to see tangible evidence that this is in fact happening and that there is a clear policy shift to implement these promises, and these are known to citizens. Excellencies, the plight of unaccompanied Eritrean minors crossing international borders is becoming increasingly visible, revealing a population characterized by its heightened vulnerability. Eritrean minors, the majority males between 12 to 17 years of age, manage the journey across the borders into neighboring countries and then through the desert across the Mediterranean. On reaching Italy, many keep on moving north. From recently collected data, those leaving Eritrea are getting younger. Children represent our future. And as Eritrean children increasingly cross international borders, the future of Eritrea is walking away. The consequences of these risky journeys across international borders, the desert and the sea, are too dire to bear. The impact on unaccompanied minors will be everlasting, leaving them scarred and traumatized for life. I recently met a young Eritrean guy who said, "In Eritrea, after studies, you go to the military. A mother raises children just to give them to the military." So according to them, the remaining option is to leave. I would like to commend at this point Eritrea for its reported progress in combating one of the most deadly diseases, namely malaria, and its laudable efforts to reduce maternal mortality. I have been collecting data on economic, social, and cultural rights since last year by means of a questionnaire designed for that purpose. This is work in progress. However, I have received reports relating to inadequate health services and medical care, including mental health, forcing people to travel abroad for treatment. The right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standards of physical and mental health is fully recognized in international human rights law. Therefore, Eritrea must take measures to create conditions which would assure to all medical services and medical attention in the event of sickness. Allow me to focus now on the issue of adequate housing. forced evictions and demolitions of houses in Eritrea, the bulk of my third report. I acknowledge a government's responsibility to manage its territory in the context of its urban planning and development. However, evictions and demolitions of dwelling houses need to respect international norms. In 2005, it was estimated that by 2015, about 5,000 new dwelling units would be required annually. And the whole point is that these dwelling houses have been destroyed, and residents protested. I would like to end here by saying that I've put many recommendations in my long version of this report, but let me say that I would suggest that before I can continue working on Eritrea, that I do get access and that the government makes the necessary steps to provide access to the Special Rapporteur to be able to continue working on her mandate. Thank you.
I thank the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Eritrea for her statement, especially for having stayed within the time limits of her statement. And I would now open up the floor to members of the committee who would wish to comment or have questions. Eritrea, Ambassador.